Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and this is the Software Talent Wars webinar, part of our Telecom Talent Wars series. Today, we'll be discussing the demand for software skill sets across the wireless ecosystem. Our sponsors today are the Competitive Carriers Association, as well as AT&T. I'll be joined by two guests from AT&T, as well as representatives from Broadcom and Kineticom. Today's discussion topics include mobile app development and how carriers can use software to compete with over-the-top players, embedded software and its importance in mobile devices and chips, specific skill sets and programming languages that are in demand, top universities for hiring software developers, how larger companies compete with startups for talent, and we will also touch on top U.S. cities for software engineers if time permits. We will take 2 or 3 questions at the end of the webinar, so if you have a question, please send it to us using your GoToWebinar control panel. Now I'd like to introduce our guests. Laura Merling is Vice President of Ecosystems and Solutions at AT&T. AT&T recruited Merling to transform the network into a platform. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Terri Timberman is Executive Vice President of Global Human Resources at Broadcom. She oversees all of the company's HR functions, including training and development, recruitment and retention, and integration of acquisitions. Terri, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, and hello, everyone.
Matt Beattie is Executive Director of AT&T's Fiber to the Building program, which is part of the company's Project Velocity IP. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Martha.
And Jonathan Langley is Director of Recruiting at Kineticom, a leading talent search firm that focuses on telecom and wireless. Jonathan, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for the invite.
Laura, I'd like to start by hearing about your role at AT&T and the need for software development skill sets in your business area.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So my role is an interesting and adventurous one. What does it mean to turn the network into a platform is a lot. It's taking everything from the underlying core network infrastructure, think your wireless access, all the way through to what we talk about as typical voice type communications or messaging, to things like the underlying quality of service. Across all of those, how do you make those programmable assets where AT&T may not be the provider of the finished service or finished product, someone else may be. And that really means a mindset change for AT&T and how we approach product development. Instead of me delivering you the AT&T Connect finished product, is there a third party, whoever the next Skype is that wants to build and build their own type of communications platform? For us, from a mindset change, we need people that understand what it means to be a platform, understanding the underlying architecture, infrastructure, all the way through to web services and what it means to have APIs, API-enabled things, and protocols ranging from things like REST, SOAP, and JSON to XML. So it is understanding underlying middleware type capabilities, and then the interfaces that would be leveraged. We also are hiring a lot of folks that we're looking to bring on people both on the product management side as well as on the engineering side that understands agile methodologies. If you think about a big company like AT&T, we traditionally deliver things in a waterfall model where we'll come up with 80-page requirements documents and deliver the product in 18 months. We're getting things down to small bites of stuff that can be delivered over a 3-week sprint, and then being able to deliver products at the end of each sprint to market and deploy them. And it requires a particular skill set for how you think about how you define a product, as well as how you deliver that product. In terms of technical skills, it could range anything from traditional things like Java all the way to things like Ruby. So it's a pretty broad range.
And can you talk a little bit about the competition for those skill sets and how that's changing?
Yeah, it's interesting when you start to think about who has those skills. It's not other telecommunications companies that we go and get those skills from, right? We're getting those skills from companies like Google or Facebook, or we're getting those skills from other software companies, whether it be, the next startup, or whether it be a traditional software company, maybe like an SAP, or even think cloud computing companies like EMC. We're going and pulling people from traditional software companies to make sure that as we're turning ourselves into a platform, we're looking at platform really means software, and we're going from hardware to software, so we're looking at all software skills.
Thank you. Okay, now Terri, can you tell us a little bit about how Broadcom recruits software engineers and how software is becoming more crucial to chip design?
Sure. Software is really an essential element these days to chip design. I think you could think of Broadcom as a complete silicon solutions company versus simply a semiconductor company. Our chips have become so complex that in order for our customers to harness the true power of chips, we need to develop the core software to ensure that we can seamlessly integrate our chips into their systems. So our customers want turnkey solutions. They don't have time to design boards or write software for our chips. So we've got to do that, and the software in our chips allows us to customize them to work with our customers for a specific device. So we try to deliver everything, an integrated solution, including the software. We also use software to automate our routine test scenarios. We have, in many cases, are writing a variety of custom code to map to custom solutions. All of this geared to giving our customers an advantage. In terms of the types of roles for software engineers at Broadcom, we're always looking for engineers with skills at the physical layer, software systems, multimedia, embedded, the protocol stack, device driver, applications. We also, I think, take a broader look at the folks that we hire, and we really seek a balance of the technical skills, strong communication and leadership skills. We also want people who are flexible, demonstrate creativity, intellectual curiosity, and I think in today's world, most importantly, an ability to collaborate.
Right. Now, the balance of technical skills with communication and leadership skills connects a little bit, I think, Matt, to your role at AT&T. I know that you value salespeople that can not only understand software but can communicate about it with customers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure thing. So a lot of times, people who kind of grew up in a software environment find themselves in sales and marketing and kind of scratch their heads and ask them how they got there. That's pretty much what I do. But the reason we value people with software skill sets in sales functions, marketing, and sales engineering functions is because they're problem solvers. What folks in sales and marketing do is they match technology and products to address a specific customer need. And a lot of times that process can be very complex. You have to understand what the customer does, you have to understand what the application does, and you have to figure out a way to marry those two things together. And it can get kind of tricky. People with really good software skills are used to that because they're used to taking a complex problem, break it up into simpler problems, like writing code for an object, for example, and then they take the designs that they created for those objects and they put them back together to deliver an overall complicated product or application. And those skills are critical when you're problem solving out with a customer in the marketplace.
Great. Now, Jonathan, you're in a unique position to sort of have a bird's eye view of many companies in the industry. So can you give us a little bit of information about some of the competition for software talent that you're seeing?
Absolutely. And Kineticom, with the core business that we support, we actually support, I would say, more on the network infrastructure and actually the networks themselves. But following on from that, what we've seen the carriers doing, not as much as those type of skill sets, but we've definitely seen an increase with regards to the mobile application. We're also seeing a lot of data analysis, a lot of QA positions coming through because the apps are great, but they also need to work on the network. So we've seen, I say, an uptick with regards to the engineers that actually make the networks work as well. So the RF guys as well as then the network and the transport on the core side, because it's great building an app, but if it can't connect and it can't work, it isn't a lot of use to anyone. So we've seen an increase with regards to those positions, as well as then more data analysis, .NET developers. We've seen a lot of project management work with regards to being able to understand, you know, the app shops, if you will. You know, the AT&T. You know, how do you actually buy an app? So that, you know, there's a whole infrastructure around how apps are delivered as well. So we've seen on the network itself, but also we've seen in the mobile apps and really the Q&A side as well, making sure that they work.
Obviously, apps are a huge growth area. I believe that a recent Network World study found that mobile app developers are now making more than wireless network engineers, more than data modelers. The projected 2013 salary range for these developers is $92,000 to $133,000, and that's a 9% increase from 2012. So I'd like to ask each of you, if you could, to comment on any experience you have working with app developers. I know that some of these skill sets are not even learned in a formal classroom setting. People learn it on their own, and I think that might sometimes present a challenge to recruiters. So, Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about that to start with? Do you work directly with app developers, or do people who work for you work with app developers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with app developers on two fronts. One is we do look to hire app developers from people that understand the application development model, but we also, back to some of the stuff Matt had talked about, which was we need to make sure that the app developers that we're working with, we might hire them in a business function or a product management function, as well as just app development. We want product managers to have those same skills. But they have to be able to solve a business problem versus thinking about technology for the sake of technology. And so we'll hire them in two roles. One is as product managers. Two, we do hire app developers. We have stuff that we do in our foundry, which is our innovation centers. We have 3 of them around the globe. And what we do is try to think about solving a business problem and what the end solution would need to look like for our customers, and then work towards that. So you start with, hey, here's the business problem you want to solve, which is why you need someone that has that, what are we trying to solve, what's the related app, and how does that work back into the core network, and what's the value that we need to make available. And there is a lot of competition around those skill sets, but we want to make sure that they have more than just, you know, the app development skills. And I think we also hire them as, we do have some contractors that, again, will help some of our end customers with the solution in building it out and thinking how it gets designed and architected, and we partner with them on the optimization side of the application or the feature functions that need to be made available from the network. But again, we're trying to shift away from always being the delivery vehicle of the end app, right? We're trying to enable customers and other app developers to deliver that end app. So we use them only for a demonstration purpose to our customer or to help assist the customer in getting to where they need to.
Right, empowering that customer. Now, you mentioned contractors. Jonathan, can you talk a little bit about roles that you see in this space being more likely to be filled by contractors versus developed in-house? I know that sometimes companies just can't find or can't hire full-time the talent they need, and they have to go to contractors.
Yeah, I think with the space, the mobile app space, because the turnaround is so quick, the contractors themselves or the people developing these apps, they actually like the quick fire nature of the work. So, you know, they like to move from project to project. I think where the difficulty that we have as far as on the recruiting side is really validating that experience. And one thing that we're careful to do is, you know, we peel it back and working with some of the clients that we've supported and we've placed people with, you know, we have to make sure there's a really good grounding with regards to the computer science side, as well as, you know, the architecture of the app itself, as well as the actual user interface. it's great if you can build an app that functions really well, but I think more than ever now, because it is, the turnaround from starting to develop an app through to when it goes to market is so quick. You also need not just the guy in the bedroom that's just interested in code. They also need to understand what the user interface looks like. How will the customer interact? And I think that's the piece that's a bit more difficult to qualify.
Right, and I think that maybe that's where you run into people who haven't had as much formal training in app development, having a little bit of a deficit there. Matt, I know that you've talked in the past a lot about the need for app developers who can communicate with the customer, especially on the enterprise side. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. The reason they have to be able to communicate to the customers, in order to apply an app to a business need, you have to know a couple things. You have to know how the app feels from the user's perspective, and what they're going to do with it within their business environment. So a good app can fall apart with a bad UI. So they have to be able
Right.
to kind of understand what the user's ultimately going to do with it. They also have to understand how the user's going to derive an economic benefit from it, right? So it's bad for all of us when we sell an app to a customer and they have an expectation that it's going to either drive some revenue or reduce costs, and it doesn't happen. So being able to understand what they're going to do with it, how they're going to derive an economic benefit from it, make sure that the app meets those needs, and kind of tie all that stuff together requires a lot of great communication skills. You have to be able to probe for what the customer's going to do with it. You have to be able to listen to what they're telling you. They have to be able to go back and translate that into a different set of requirements for your apps. The other thing that they have to be able to do is a lot of apps that we deploy are actually kind of hooks back into customers' legacy systems.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to understand how that legacy environment works, that may kind of go outside the span of knowledge of the mobile app developer. So they have to be able to kind of work with a customer's or a client's IT staff to kind of get the information that they need to go back and, again, make that app a viable way to provide access to those legacy systems. So the communications process is critical for getting these things out there.
Can you give us some examples of apps that the AT&T's Fiber to the Building program has deployed for enterprise customers?
So a lot of our most common apps that our enterprise accounts tend to center on things that are some way, shape, or form reduce costs. So there are a lot of applications that are ways to push out to streamline, say, the dispatch process. Like, that's a very common mobile application where a customer has an old-style dispatch process that relies on paper forms and somebody on a phone in an 800 number pushing stuff out. When you push out real-time dispatch information over a tablet, over a handset, what you do is you keep your technicians out in the field longer. You make better use of their time. You don't have to keep returning vehicles back in to a central depot to go get more work logs and things like that. We use that within our company, and we sell those solutions to other enterprise and small businesses. So that, I'd say that would be one very good example of a whole class of applications that we see really generating a lot of easy to quantify benefit out there.
All right, great, thank you. Now, Terri, we are going to move on to embedded software, but before we do, I did want to ask you if you have anything to add as far as mobile apps. Terri, can you hear me?
Sorry, I think that the question around how you assess the folks that you're looking to hire is really critical. And we, Broadcom is typically known as a hardware company, but actually about 35% of our total engineering workforce is focused on software. And we really rely on those high-level software programmers to help us assess the new talent that we're bringing in. We bring in talent from new college grads all the way through highly skilled and experienced engineers. And so we rely on the folks that we have today to help us make the selections.
That's terrific. Now, can you educate us a little bit about the embedded software and some of the capabilities of the chipsets that the software engineers are working on?
So what we're really looking for when we look at potential employees are folks who have a really broad variety of programming languages, C, C++, assembly, Linux, Perl, Python, Ruby, all the way through SQL, HTML, etc. In the hardware area, we're looking certainly at the scripting languages like Perl and Python, and that's very critical to us for the core driver or drive development. C, C++ is the most prevalent language. What we're seeing in the app side and on standard development is typically is Java.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the competition for these skill sets? I know that you've told us that you compete with other chip companies as well as outside the semiconductor area a little bit. Is that right?
Absolutely. So we compete, I think, with just about everyone, it feels like some days, for the best talent. You know, the rate of innovation is growing exponentially. I think the battle to get the best, most qualified, talented employees continues to grow. We, as I said, we recruit at all levels, from new college grads through experienced employees. Probably a lot of the folks on the phone are people that we compete for skilled engineers with, both on the panel and probably those listening, as well as just about any of the software and chip companies around the world. We are very global. We have employees all across the world, and one of the pluses for us is we can, because we're so geographically dispersed, we can hire people in a wide variety of areas, so people can typically work where they want to or close to where they want to. Probably one of our largest competitors is Qualcomm, but we think that, frankly, competition for labor makes us stronger. I think it makes the jobs better, the environment better for the employees, and just keeps us all at the top of our game.
Can you tell us about some of the locations around the world where Broadcom hires?
Certainly. Here in the U.S., we have a strong presence in California, but we're also in Colorado, we're in Austin, Texas, we're in South Carolina, Massachusetts, we're in Canada, both coasts, basically. And then outside the U.S., just about every place you can think. So we have a number of locations in China, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, Japan. We're broad-based in the UK and across Europe. We have a very strong team in Israel, and we have an exceptionally large and strong team in India. So really well scattered around the world.
Anywhere you want to go. Okay, great.
Pretty much. And we have a very mobile workforce, so we're pretty supportive of people who want to work and live in different regions, which is actually a big draw for potential employees.
I'm sure the same is true at AT&T, the opportunity to move around. Now, Terri, you talked a lot actually about some of the specific skill sets, and Laura and Matt, I know that you have also named some of the specific skill sets that you hire, but I do want to just revisit that briefly for anybody who may be listening and trying to take notes. Laura, you listed a few specific programming languages at the beginning. Can I just ask you to name those again for those who may be paying particular attention to AT&T and what you're hiring?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of skill sets, and I said some of mine are programming skills from languages and things like that, and others are how you approach programming. So anything from, you know, I want folks that understand agile development methodologies and have actually done them, experienced them, participated in that model of development, all the way through to people that understand what it means to become a platform, to develop web-based services. So how do you properly structure and design an API? You would then need to understand anything from XML, SOAP to REST from a protocol perspective, all the way through to, you know, we are still looking for folks that have skills that are traditional skills around Java, but then we also want folks that understand Ruby and PHP. So it is a pretty broad range of skills. It would depend on what we're hiring them to do, but just think all things software related. You know, I want them to know how to, you know, use and leverage cloud infrastructure for development and development cycles and how you automate that process. I mean, it's a whole combination of things that we look at, broadly speaking.
Do you find that you hire a lot of people who have been in and out of a lot of different companies, or do you find that you're hiring more people who maybe have been at an AT&T or a company of that size and are on a more linear career path?
So that's a great question. Actually, the hiring we've been doing recently is two things. One, it's a lot of folks that have different experiences, so a broad range of experience, and have stayed places a couple of years here and there, and have increased and developed their skill set for doing these different roles at different companies. But we also have been looking for what I'll call it the entrepreneur. But I have a couple of people now that I've hired, and I want to clone them, which is basically they're the technical guy that built a company that was the entrepreneur / architect around the product initially, or the CTO, and they've now sold their company off, or they've merged with another company, and they actually understand how to build something, how to do it quickly. They understand the technology, and typically they also understand how to solve this problem, because without that, the application you develop doesn't really matter. It's got to be solving a problem. And so really looking for people that have that blend of skills, and it tends to be technical entrepreneurs that have started a company. If you want me to be really specific, that's it.
That's yeah, that's great. So if you start a company and it doesn't work out, then there's a path. Now, Matt, you had some great comments a couple weeks ago about the type of thinking that software developers do and how that informs work that isn't even really related to coding. And I'd like to ask you to share those comments with our audience, if you could.
Sure. It's kind of a little bit of what I was talking about up front, that software coding in general takes complexity and reduces it into kind of manageable chunks, and then builds back up the solution to the manageable chunks into kind of an elegant, complex solution. And that type of thinking, that kind of turning a problem into a simpler set of objects, is a way of thinking that applies in across a variety of different disciplines in a technical company. So it applies in a marketing setting, it applies in a finance setting. As you can imagine, when you're talking about a company of the size and scope of AT&T, our finances can get pretty complex. And you'd be surprised how many people that we have in finance that actually started off as computer scientists, programmers, or engineers in another discipline. The other thing that we do look for now is that we look for people. We still look for some of the basics, so we talk about some of the new stuff that we want people to do, but from a collaboration perspective, we still need SharePoint designers. We need people who can do HTML and web design. But I'd say one of the biggest things that we're kind of rallying around is the concept of leveraging platforms. So people who have a good grasp of not just how to write APIs, but how to use APIs. And that's something that translates into multiple types of jobs. So if you know how to leverage an API in a program, you probably know how to take advantage of a different function or a different component of a solution that you need to bring to bear on a problem. So that's kind of what we look for. And again, just to kind of reiterate, these skills that software developers have are translatable into other functions, so that when they join a company like an AT&T, they may start off doing what the last thing they did was, which was writing code, and then they may find out that they are suited or want to kind of experience being like a support engineer for a customer, or moving into a marketing function where they're talking about how to get people to buy the types of code that they may have written 2 or 3 years ago. So very transferable experience that can lead to success in a whole bunch of different disciplines.
Definitely. Now, a lot of companies out there are trying to hire individuals who know how to use and leverage APIs. How do you find and recruit the best when the market is so competitive?
Well, some of them we find through our own developer network. AT&T has got its own set of APIs that we have out there that enable app developers to access information from our network, which is kind of unique. And so we run into a lot of good people that way. You run into people through partners that you may work with or vendors, kind of the situation that you heard about earlier where you've got that owner, that CTO of a small company who wants to join a larger company to get access to more resources to enable them to have a bigger impact out in the marketplace. So there's a lot of interacting with folks that are kind of in our own ecosphere, if you will, in identifying talent that you work with directly, right? So a lot of our best people come in that way or through referrals.
Terri, do you find people the same way, through referrals, through an internal developer network? Is that a good source for Broadcom?
Absolutely. We have a very strong employee referral bonus program inside of Broadcom. We think that our employees know who's good, and so our goal is to hire a significant percentage of our new hires through that process, and that's been very, very effective for us. We also are known as a serial acquirer, so the comments that were made about folks who do their own startups and becoming very good employees, that's been very successful for us as well. So we do a lot of acquisitions, over 50, frankly, and we've got, I think, a very good rhythm and process for integrating those folks, and it gives people, I think, the best of both large and small company feel. So you get the entrepreneurial feeling, the distributed decision making that you get in a small company with the resources of a large company, and that gives people a lot of flexibility in their careers. You add to that geographic flexibility and the kinds of diversity of opportunities and markets, and I think it's just a really exciting proposition for people.
Sounds like it. Okay, does anybody else have anything to add on specific skill sets before we move on to hiring college grads? Okay, well, we are hearing that universities can't produce enough software engineers to satisfy the recruiters who come to their campuses, and that mobile and wireless companies are stepping up college recruiting, and as you all have said, they are competing with traditional software companies. So I would like to ask each of you to share comments about any specific universities that you do tend to recruit at, and programs that you found to be particularly compatible with your companies. Matt, would you like to start?
Sure. So first, I kind of say that college recruiting is it's a lot of fun. Right? It's fun to be around young, energetic people who are starting their career. But probably the most important thing that we've learned through college recruiting is that it's not just the talent of the students that's there, it's the role the university plays in helping find good fits. So the best combination, the employees that we tend to get that work out best through our college hire efforts come through programs who know us really well, and they help us select students. So when they put forward students as candidates, they generally know what we're looking for, they know what our culture is like, and they do a really good job of assessing a fit between the student and a company. So just to name a couple, Miami of Ohio is a company that a college that we've been working with for a long time, and have had lots of great success where kids coming from that university tend to be very well suited for our company. They do a good job here, and they end up staying for a while. Other universities where we've had similar success include Penn State, Rutgers, UT Austin, Texas A&M. We get a lot of help in Texas because, of course, that's where we're headquartered, Michigan State, and the University of Washington. But all of those programs share in common a desire to help find that match between the student and the company so that they both win.
Great. Yeah, Penn State was a name that came up quite a lot in researching this report, and some of the others as well. Now, Terri, I know that you mentioned that Broadcom pays particular attention to the U.S. News and World Report rankings. Can you share with us which part of those rankings you focus on in particular when looking at college recruits?
Sure. I share some of the schools that we look at, and I think that the comments just made about the fit and the match between the university and their culture and your corporate culture are also absolutely critical. We look at a lot of schools that are both on the U.S. News and World Report list for best universities, but also that are near to some of our sites, because frankly, we like to start wherever possible at the intern level. and work with the universities so that we have folks coming to us for internships. At any given point in time, we may have between 400 and 500 interns working at Broadcom. And then we like to have a relationship with them all the way through to graduation so that they've got an understanding of Broadcom and its culture. But we do a lot of work with Georgia Tech, with Stanford, UC San Diego, actually the whole UC system. And then, of course, here, our headquarters is actually on the UC Irvine campus, and we have a very strong relationship with them. So kids can literally, if they're doing an internship, walk over to work from campus, which has been a big plus. We also do a lot of what we would consider more corporate partnerships with these key schools. So it's not just about the recruiting, but perhaps around doing research and development, supporting specific professors and their programs that also have strong linkage to Broadcom. Just everything we can do to get the highest caliber students that become the high caliber employees for us.
That's great. Can you share with us roughly about how many people Broadcom employs right now?
Round numbers, about 11,500.
Okay, that's what I thought. And about roughly what percent do you think are in the U.S. versus not in the U.S.?
I think very roughly, because it changes regularly, 60-40, 60% U.S.
Okay, so most of your college recruiting is probably based here in the U.S., right?
I would say it's, again, split 60-40, probably very similar to our workforce. So we do recruit outside with strong university relationships in India, in the UK, and in Israel as well, and in China.
Oh, okay. Oh, in China as well. All right, great. And you were talking about interns, and I know that AT&T is also very active in that area. Laura, can you comment a little bit on AT&T's internship programs?
Yeah, we actually have a couple of different internship programs. So there's one that's sort of the traditional summer internship program where students come into the business to learn, get real work experience, traditional internship program. But the thing that I think is super interesting is we have also a program for either exceptional students or students that have recently graduated, which is what we call we call it LDP, but it's the Leadership Development Program. And LDP program plays on both sides of the business, both on the, I'll call it marketing and business side, as well as the engineering side. And that program is interesting because what it does is it puts people on they do 3 rotations. So you come to the company, you do 8 to 12 months with one group in a particular role, working on a particular project or function. Then you move to another group, and each time you do it, you do work experience at a higher grade level. And so you get not only the experience of doing the tactical function, but also the either, you're working your way up towards a management type set skills if that's the path you want to take. And that program is something that folks really, really like to be able to do and gets us a lot of the recruits, because you don't come out and just stay in one, you're not taking a job, right? You're building your skill set in a large company, and you do it over the course of a 2-year period. So for me, that's the program that I have, I'm using both programs. I have students working out of the foundry we have a foundry in Plano, which is our innovation center in Plano, Texas. Those folks came to us from Oklahoma University. It's a group of them working in that foundry for the summer. And I've got some folks from Stanford working in the foundry here this summer in Palo Alto. But then I also have 3 people that are leadership development program students who are recent grads that are getting this broad range of experience. So they're really great programs, and they can tie together. You can go from being a summer intern to joining the LDP program, which gets you even more visibility and access. So those are the programs that I like to use at AT&T.
Well, internships are clearly a great way to get young people excited about working for some of the bigger companies. But Matt, I'd like to go back to you for just a minute before we leave this topic, because you said that you find college recruiting to be a lot of fun. And, I do think that there are a lot of people right out of college who would rather work for a small company or a startup, or at least they think they would. And I'd like to ask you, what are the things that you find excite college grads about going to work for a huge company like AT&T right out of school?
Big impact. So what we offer somebody coming out of college is we offer them the opportunity to make a really big impact. So if you come into AT&T as a developer, you got the opportunity to work on products and projects where the dollars have B's in them. So that can be pretty exciting. So when you're talking to somebody who wants to feel like they're part of something big and exciting, then that's one way of getting them involved. The other thing that a company like AT&T offers a young person, and this is a little bit less obvious to them, you kind of have to explain it a little bit, but young people, they like to change jobs a lot. So if you think about all of us when we started our careers, we're probably hopping around quite a bit. What a larger firm offers you the opportunity to do is change what you do from one job to another without necessarily having to change companies. And there's a lot of appeal to that. So you can be an engineer one day and you can be a manager of an outside group of techs the next at a company like AT&T, kind of like you heard about the leadership development program. That's literally what we take young people through. We give them access to a bunch of different experiences in a relatively short period of time, which makes them better employees here, and it also makes them more competitive for jobs outside if they elect to do something like that. So that's kind of that's what we try to convey with people. And when you're college recruiting, you're looking for that match. And if that story appeals to the person, then you know you probably have a good potential future employee. If it really doesn't, then you know right away that they would be better served working for a smaller company, and maybe you'll pick them up later on after they've had an opportunity to do some of that. But ultimately what we're looking for is we're looking for that good match. We want the people who work for us to really feel good about the choice they made.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk about some of the people that you pick up after they have worked in a startup environment. I know that Laura was very high on that particular background. Can you comment on that at all, and whether you've got some experience with people that have been in and out of the startup world?
Oh, sure. We have lots of them, quite frankly. And what folks with startup experience bring to a larger company is they bring a sense of kind of dynamism and experience and around just getting things done, right? So they don't come carrying the baggage of explaining why a problem that somebody looked at 10 years ago can't be solved. They don't think that way. So they think more about, okay, this is a problem and I don't know how I'm going to go get this done, but I know I'm going to go figure it out. So that kind of offers a lot of fresh perspective. And again, what we offer to people coming from a smaller or an entrepreneurial firm is obviously we offer stability from a financial standpoint. We've been around for a while. We're probably going to be around for a lot longer. But more importantly, we offer them access to resources and an opportunity to make that big impact that they might not have at a smaller firm. So that's kind of the appeal that we have for people coming from a startup.
Right. Well, who would you say, in general terms, is the biggest competitor for you in your fiber to the building program in hiring? Maybe not just one specific company, but is it the startup world? Is it traditional software companies? Who do you think you're competing with the most in hiring?
I would say there are two kinds. Startups primarily in the mobile application space, so it's specific, kind of a specific segment of the startup group, and then hardware vendors in the networking space, like say, like a Cisco or a Juniper. I'd say those two communities of companies are the two biggest ones that we compete with for talent. And a lot of times what you get is you get cross-pollination, where we'll have people go out to companies like that and then people from companies that come back. So if we lose an employee to a company like that, it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as it goes well, because there's a darn good chance that they may want to come back later on, and we value the experience they picked up at one of those firms.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Terri, do you see the same thing at Broadcom, cross-pollination, people come and go a little bit?
Absolutely, and again, we've done so many acquisitions, and that kind of fresh approach to things gets us to constantly assess, make sure we don't become too bureaucratic, and that our processes all have meaning. But we do see people come in and out. We welcome them back as long as they've been a good employee. That's important. They bring, I think, fresh experience back to us. It's a very competitive recruiting world, and I think any company that doesn't recognize they're going to have those kinds of transitions in and out in this environment, it's just not realistic. I think that the days of, boy, if you leave, you can never come back are long gone in our industry.
Right. Now, you already told us that you do see Qualcomm as your biggest specific competitor. Are there any other groups of companies, maybe even outside of semiconductors, that you've noticed as emerging competitors to Broadcom when it comes to hiring?
I think, frankly, you could do the whole list of the top 100 technology companies and then kind of bucket startups as a group as another competitive area. I think we are all constantly competing. I personally think that a bigger challenge that our entire industry faces is increasing the flow of people into STEM education, and subsequently then the outcome of more and more people graduating in the technology-based degrees. We actually, as a company, have that focus through our company foundation. We have a charitable foundation, and that is the mission of that foundation, is to increase the number of people, children in particular, going into STEM. A very long-term view, but I think that 10, 15, 20 years from now, it will make a difference if we can get more people into STEM and interested in it, because we're just not graduating enough.
Right. It is a very important issue. Now, Laura, I know that you work in a different part of AT&T from Matt, and that you've talked a little bit about the competition that you face with maybe more traditional software companies. Would that be who you would name as the biggest competitor for talent that you see?
Yeah, I think, well, it's obviously other telecommunications companies are trying to get some of that same software talent. I think everyone right now sees that, you know, the world is turning to a world of software, and so yes, hardware is still there, but it's, you know, in the end, it's going to be a world of programmable pieces that plug and play. And to get there, we need those same resources, all of us do, that are in telecommunications. But, you know, I'm looking to pull my talent from the same places that others probably are looking to pull their talent, which are these, you know, first and foremost, those software companies are my competitor for that talent before I look at other telecommunications companies, because that's where those people will tend to go. They're really, you know, the typical software company, person doing software development doesn't think about AT&T and go, oh, I'm going to go do software, right? You think about AT&T and you think hardware, core network, infrastructure. You don't think software. And so it's a, you know, I'm out talking about it, what it means to turn AT&T into a platform company, so people know that what we want are software developers. And that means I am competing with other people that build platforms, whether you look at Salesforce, Facebook, you know, Google, Twitter, whoever it might be, somebody that's building an underlying infrastructure that other people build end products on top of. So I really see them first and foremost as my biggest competitor.
Okay, thank you. Well, Jonathan, you, I know, see a lot of competition, and I'm wondering if you see some of the most promising talent that companies want to recruit sometimes going to startups, or is it a different world that you don't really have to deal with?
I think when we've supported these type of positions, I think the big difference, and it's been touched upon, is that, you know, what happens after the startup. There's engineers that are serial startup chasers, if you will, because everybody's looking for the next Facebook. But once you've gone through sort of the drama and really the stress of being at the front end of a smaller company, and maybe it didn't work, but your core skills are very good, that after you've done that once, two, maybe three times, that you become a bit jaded because it is a different lifestyle. And at that point, you then start to look at the bigger companies because you're a good engineer. It's just that one particular idea, or the first two ideas. Not everything is going to be the next Facebook or the next Twitter or the next big app, if you will. So I think where we've seen people looking to get out of startups, it's because they've become jaded around. This is the third time I've been waiting for second round funding. I'm not sure I can do this again, and the product's not go somewhere. So that's where we've seen, and that's where we've had the success of pulling people from startups.
Okay, that's interesting. And where would you say you see the most intense competition for hiring within the wireless ecosystem?
Sort of where isn't there, really? I pulled some stats, and I know you had some as well. With regards to the sheer number of positions, just to give you an example, from December 2012 to February, there's been approximately 3,000 people looking for work that are active. That doesn't mean they're not employed, and it doesn't mean they're 100% looking. It might just be the passive candidate. But in that period, there were 27,000 job postings, and that the numbers that I've got are about 60% of total market. So 3,000 people into 27,000 positions, you're looking at about 0.1 person per job.
Not enough.
Not enough.
Back to that STEM education issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we finish, I would like to take a few minutes to move on to parts of the U.S. that are particularly good for software engineers. It's no surprise that the Bay Area is still #1, and the coasts are well represented. However, I think we do see some other cities coming along that maybe wouldn't have been on this list 2 or 3 years ago, places like St. Louis and Denver and Omaha. So I would like to ask each of you for any comments you'd like to share on different parts of the U.S. where you're finding or noticing more talent, or where you think the talent shortage is particularly intense. I know, Laura, when we talked earlier, you mentioned the Bay Area as a place where this talent shortage is actually quite severe. But do you have anything else that you'd like to add about areas in the U.S. that are good or bad for hiring?
Yeah, I mean, other areas that are good for hiring, right? You want to find, as we've talked about, sort of this notion of folks that come out of startups and have some great experience and have sort of that unbridled view and perspective of, hey, I just need to go get something done, whatever it takes to get it done. New York is another great place to find some really amazing talent, the New York, New Jersey area, with all the startups that are going on in that part of the world right now. We've also been able to find a lot of great talent in Dallas, in Texas. So whether it be Dallas or Austin, Austin has a great group of startups and technology innovators as well. Those are kind of the buckets, other than the other West Coast place, the Seattle, Portland area, where there's a lot of strong folks that are doing things within the, I'll say, middleware, cloud computing, infrastructure space. There's a lot of that in that part of the world. So those are kind of the other places that I look to really hire and find candidates.
Okay, great. Thank you. Terri, do you have anything to share about specific parts of the U.S.?
I think just to add to what I said earlier, we're finding people really spread across. Colorado has been good for us. We have a number of offices there. Austin has been good. Southern California versus Northern California has also been stronger for us. What we find often is if you step just a little bit outside the main metropolitan area, so instead of Denver, go a little bit outside of Denver, you often can find some great people and a quality of life that seems to be very attractive for folks, a little less intense or a little less crowded. Housing prices are better. So we find ourselves often not in the midst of a major metropolitan area, but within a 20 to 50 mile radius of that, and find great teams there. And we're pretty good about, if we find a great team someplace, do a team hire, keep them there, and off we go.
Excellent. Okay, Matt, what about your teams? What are some of the best locations?
Well, one of our best is Southern California. The corridor between LA County down to San Diego has been particularly good for us. I mean, this is just a very dynamic area. A lot of, when you talked earlier about hiring people from smaller companies, there's a whole lot of dynamism around the small company marketplace in that basin. So we do particularly well there. We also do well kind of on the home field, which is in Texas. So we do have a lot of luck recruiting throughout the entire state of Texas. But you heard Laura talking earlier about particular success in Austin, which we know is a high-tech corridor. And then finally, Atlanta. So we do find a lot of good tech, high-tech employees coming out of the Southeast, kind of thinking of Atlanta as that kind of high-tech hub of the Southeast. We get a lot of great employees into the company from that area as well.
Okay, great, all over the country. And Jonathan, I know that you must talk to people all over the country, so I'd like to ask you about that. And then also, I'd like to ask you to share with the audience what you've noticed about talent coming in and out of the U.S. I think that you have seen a little bit of a shift in how that's playing out in telecom, and I'd like to ask you to share that before we close, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. With regards to where we source candidates, I would echo the locations. We're based in San Diego, so we do a lot of work here in SoCal, Northern California. We also seen with Seattle, there's been definitely a need in Seattle, but there's also been some good schools up there, more on the sort of the game designer type side, but there's definitely a translation between some of the skill sets and how apps are built, so that's worked well. I would say Austin for us is a good place to try and take people from, if you will, and that's been echoed as far as a great source of candidates. I know GM announced that they're going to have, they're opening up a new technology center in Austin with about 1,500 positions. A contact of mine at HP is actually relocating to Austin. His role is sort of talent management. So on all the hotbeds and traditional sort of, I'd say the Facebooks and the Googles, they're actually now opening satellite offices in the New Yorks. To get closer to talent. Maybe if you went to MIT, you don't want to come to the West Coast. So I've got friends that source for those companies that they're actually now relocating out to the East Coast because they need to get closer to the talent coming out of school and have those conversations early. With regards to talent moving to and from the U.S., we do have the ability to work with H-1Bs. Where we found a lot of success is we've got sort of dual ownership, so we can actually bring candidates across with E2 visas as well as E3 visas from Australia. That's been very successful for us in the past. One thing that we've seen, and it isn't a lot, but one thing that we've seen is talent moving overseas. We're now talking to candidates that want to go to Europe, that traditionally, that haven't looked overseas. So, we're looking and investigating that. I mean, there aren't enough people in the U.S., but there's a great need elsewhere as well. So, the U.S. market, as far as candidates, are also looking to take advantage of, Europe and Asia-Pac as well.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been very informative. I do want to mention that RCR Wireless has a feature report on the software talent wars. It published today on our website, and it's available to download. And this will conclude our webinar. I'd like to thank each of you very much for your time today. Laura Merling, Vice President of Ecosystems and Solutions at AT&T, thank you very much for being here today. Terri Timberman.
Thank you. I had fun on it. I had fun on the calls. It's interesting
we all
to hear
learned
what
a lot.
everybody's up to.
Yeah, I would say the same. Terri Timberman, Executive Vice President of Global Human Resources at Broadcom. We learned a lot. Thank you so much for all your insights.
Thank you all. Enjoyed it.
Matt Beattie, Executive Director of AT&T's Fiber to the Building program. Thanks so much.
Anytime.
And Jonathan Langley of Kineticom. It's always nice to hear from you. Thank you for making time for us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Everyone have a good day. This will conclude our webinar. Again, it will be this webinar as well as the feature report will be available for download on the RCR Wireless website.